Welcome to another edition of My Writing Room. Welcome to additional travels through my Scriptorium. Robert B. Parker. When I was in high school, I was reading mainly nonfiction. I was into psychology and theology, self-help, inspirational type books. I'd never really read a lot of fiction. I read fiction, I guess, as a small child. I read some fiction that was required in school, but that was about it. In high school, I started watching this television show called Spencer for Hire. And the show was good enough that when it got canceled, I wanted more of this character, more of this style of detective story. And so I turned to the books. And that led me to Robert B. Parker. The first book I ever read of Parker's was this one, Pale Kings and Princes. Just immediately loved the voice, loved the prose, the writing style, and of course loved the characters, Spencer, and then Hawk as well. And I was on vacation in Panama City. I actually grew up here, but I was living in Atlanta at the time. And I finished this, and in the little gift shop on Panama City Beach where I was staying, as soon as I finished this, they had the next one in paperback. So the second one I ever read was Crimson Joy. So in just a second, I want to share with you, I'll show you my collection, and I have a lot of them. But in 1997, my first novel, Power in the Blood, was published. And in it, I think a ton of people in it. And one of them was Robert B. Parker, his influence, what he meant to me. And of course I did that, never knowing that that he'd ever get to see it or that I'd get to share it with him. But some 4 or 5 years later, I think it was, he and I were both speaking at a mystery writers conference in South Florida, and I got to show it to him. And so I took him a copy of the book. I said, years ago, you're one of the people I thanked and dedicated this book to because of what you meant to me and what you did for me and how you inspired me. And I'm sure, that probably happened to him a lot over the years. But I remember him looking at the thank yous and the other authors that I thanked, and Scott Peck stood out to him. I think Parker was interested in psychology and counseling, and he said that Peck had meant a lot to him too. Anyway, very significant moment for me. As I was mentioning how much Parker means to me and has meant to me over the years, and his influence on my writing of crime fiction, my style, it occurred to me that he was so influential that there's actually a book on the subject, and it's called In Pursuit of Spencer. And In Pursuit of Spencer is a collection of essays by various mystery writers, and their appreciation of Parker and what he meant to them and their career. And there's just some really good ones in here. Dennis Lehane, Lawrence Block, Jeremiah Healy, Ace Atkins, Gary Phillips, just a lot of people who were also influenced by him. And that show, there's very few. Think about how many authors there are, that there's actually an entire book dedicated to their influence on the genre, on the writers in that genre. So I am not alone in my love for and appreciation of Robert B. Parker. Now, before I show you my collection, I wanted to share with you what I think are the best, some of the very best of the Spencer novels. Looking for Rachel Wallace is considered by many to be the best Spencer novel, or one of the best. It's a very early novel, and in fact it was one that I didn't read until later. Like I say, I started well into the series and kept moving forward, and then would occasionally go back and read the earlier books. I've read them all now, and Looking for Rachel Wallace is one of my tops and one of my favorites. It's really good. Backstory. This is a later book, and was probably I don't know, 5 or 6 before he passed away. I think he died in 2010. I think that's right. And but I think this is a really strong one. Is Double Deuce. Really good. I think Hawk featured in it a lot is good. Way up on my list is I was going to say second, but it is probably not quite that high. But way up there is Paper Doll. I think Paper Doll is one of the best. The story is good. With Parker, the writing is always good. The dialogue is pitch perfect. Usually just so good. If there's a criticism of Parker, is probably in the plot department. I know some people refer to his writing style as thin, but for the most part, I don't agree with that. I think it's that he uses prose that is very spare and stripped down, but it's poetic. And I think there's plenty of character development and description and those kind of things. But anyway, the writing and the character and the dialogue is usually really high, really well done, and what's strongest about the series. Probably what changes more from book to book, or in the better books, there's more plot. And I think that's the biggest part of it. So Paper Doll is way up there, and I think a good plot, a very good story. But my all-time favorite Spencer novel by Robert B. Parker is actually Walking Shadow. To me, I think this is Parker at his very best. Very best in what he always does well, dialogue, prose, but to me this one is there's more plot, there's more going on, there's, I think, more characters and interesting characters, just more story, and really fine writing. This one was published in 1994, and that is 3 years prior to the publication of Power in the Blood, my first novel. But it was the summer of '94 that I started writing. So that may have something to do with the significance of this book for me in the series and how much I like it. But I really do think it is well up there in terms of the very best that Parker has to offer. So if you haven't read Robert B. Parker, haven't read any of the Spencer novels, I highly recommend. You can start with any of them, but I would start with the best, Walking Shadow. This is in my library, in my writing room, and I have 2 different pictures of Parker. There's one of him that actually came from a mass market paperback display of Sudden Mischief, and a bookstore owner, a friend of mine, gave it to me. I have another photo actually framed that hangs in my office that I've shown previously on my little travels through the Scriptorium. So here is my Robert B. Parker collection. I have an entire bookcase, except for a few at the bottom. The entire case are Robert B. Parker novels, and all of these are signed first edition or limited edition books. Starting here with the Godwolf manuscript, they're in order as they were published. But the very beginning over here, at the very beginning over here in the corner are my signed limited editions. So these are beautiful, can you see that? Bound books with dust jackets, with slipcases that are signed and limited. I have no idea if you can even see that. I'm just holding it out there. But I have Walking Shadow, my favorite novel that way, Paper Doll, Double Deuce, Pastime, and Pastime is another one that I think is way up there on my list of my favorites. It's definitely up there. I have Stardust and Pale Kings and Princes as well. So there are the signed limited. Here are the other books, and mostly in order. And then I have non-Spencer books as well. Double Play, Poodle Springs, Perchance to Dream, a couple of the Jesse Stone books. But the Spencer novels are what I love, what I read and read